you very much. Okay. Thank you, Wendy, and good afternoon, everybody. Well, I can't see everybody, but it's nice to be in your company, and hopefully you are all well. You and yours are well and keeping COVID-free and otherwise fit and healthy as well. Now then, the agenda this afternoon. First item is apologies for absence. Are there any further ones, please, from anybody that might know? We've mentioned that Councillor Grocott is hopefully joining us, and apologies from Councillor Evans. Was there anybody else?
No, Chair.
Excellent. Good, right. Are there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest, other than they'll affect all of us in the same way, but not one of those interests that gets us into trouble. And the third item then, public open forum. Are there any members of the public that wish to address the meeting this afternoon?
No, Chair.
No, excellent, good. Someone's having a sweet in the background, or is it just interference, right? We'll move on to item 4 then, which is an overview of local government and elections bill. And I think John was going to lead on this one, was he?
Yeah.
Here's John anyway. Excellent. Good afternoon, John.
Afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I mean, the report is fairly straightforward. Some of it you're going to be fairly familiar with because you've received members' seminars on some specific items of the bill as it's gone through its progression through the Senate. The bill's been signed off now. It's going to become an act, so it was right to bring it to the committee to just give you an overview of some of the final points as they are within the to be act, and give you an overview. And really, it's more of an open discussion. If there's any points the committee want to focus on in particular to have a discussion about, then I'm happy to do that. So just as an overview of the bill itself, it obviously extends the voting age to 16 and 17-year-olds at local government elections. That's already come into law for the Senate elections that will be coming up in May, but this extends that to local government elections as well. It allows councils to change their voting system from first past the post to a single transferable vote, a form of proportional representation. It confirms now that terms of the council will be 5 years, not 4. I think the last few terms we've always had an extra bit of legislation to extend it by a year, but this now puts it in place that the term of the council will be 5 years, and it extends some candidature around who can actually stand for election as well. Other aspects include the general power of competence. That's more for community councils who were performing well, to give them powers to explore other avenues that they've got an interest in within their area. So that's a really good bit for them. It's putting things in place around remote attendance and encouraging participation in local government. So we'll soon be bringing a participation strategy to the committee that defines how people will engage with the council, and we'll push that out and make that available. It firms up the requirement that we have to live stream meetings. We've been doing that for years, so it seems a standard thing, but not all authorities are live streaming meetings, so that's something we all have to do now. And as I say, we have to allow remote attendance as well. Other aspects on CJCs, which you've all had a seminar, the corporate joint committees and the regional aspects of working. I won't go into too much on that because those details are not yet firmed up. The Act says that we're going to have corporate joint committees. How they're actually going to operate, we're still waiting on the guidance to come through on that. So yeah, I mean, all the details in the report, so I won't go into too much, but really if there's anything members want to discuss or explore further, then happy to bring them forward and we can have that discussion. Matt, I'm not sure if you want to cover anything up on the performance side of the bill. I haven't covered it in the report, but if you want to pick that up, then please do.
Okay, thanks, John. Chair, are you happy for me to come in? Okay, Thanks. So yeah, just to pick up a couple of points which John mentioned, referred to in the cover report. The bill does make changes around some of the performance management arrangements. In terms of what it means for us as an organisation, we're working through the detail on that at the moment. Probably the biggest single thing is it creates a duty to carry out an annual self-assessment or self-evaluation, and to publish the findings of that, to say what we will do about that, and then every year to report back on the findings of that self-evaluation. And it covers a lot of the sort of internal areas and mechanisms of the authority, things like procurement, workforce management, workforce planning, performance management. So there are a number of different areas that have to be covered off in that. And we do that ourselves each year, but every every electoral cycle, we must conduct a panel assessment and appoint an external panel to do that. So that's something that applies to all 22 local authorities in Wales, and the panel, we'd be expected to sort of bring in experts from outside our organisation within the local government family to conduct that. We could do it at a time to suit us, so that's something we'll have to determine as a local authority, but it must be once within every electoral cycle. Probably the other things worth mentioning, this sort of replaces the local government measure 2000 and 2009, and that requires us to set improvement objectives. You recall that each year council receives an improvement plan in October. We also set objectives at the beginning of the financial year. We have wrapped that up within the responsibilities around our corporate plan. So actually, the change within the Act doesn't make a huge amount of difference there. But probably the key thing it does is bring greater alignment between the performance measurement framework that will be in place in local government and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So probably, Chair, that's what I'd add on the performance side. And probably just sort of building on what John has mentioned, we've had certainly recently a Public Services Select Committee looking at the corporate joint committee aspects of this. I think open to views of members on the committee on this as to the value. But if members feel there is something that we would benefit from, perhaps a members' seminar on this bill, given it's fairly wide-reaching, that's something we could look to introduce. So if the committee wants officers to sort of set up a member seminar so that members can sort of work through some of the detail and have a more detailed presentation and get into some more sort of detailed questioning around the bill, that's something we would happily take a look at. So probably that's it from me, Chair.
You're muted, David.
Thank you for that. I wondered why people weren't responding to me earlier on. Right, thank you, Matthew, and thank you, John, for your inputs. And may I now ask members if they have anything to any comments to make, rather, or questions to ask of our officers. Silence is taken as being, unless everybody else is muted, of course. Everybody's reasonably happy, are they? No raised hands? Oh, Joe. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to thank the officers for all the hard work that they've done in helping to get this bill forwards, and how it actually applies within our council as well. I think it's fantastic news that 16 and 17-year-olds are now granted the vote, and I really hope that will help engage them further in our democracy. So I just think it's great news, and I'm really pleased it's all coming forwards. Excellent.
Thank you, Joe. Just one question from me to the officers. You mentioned the first past the post method of electing and so on. How would that be changed if that was the decision? Or how would the decision be taken to change how the result is arrived at? John.
It would need to be a decision of full council.
Right.
I can't remember if it's a 2/3 or a majority vote. I'd have to go back and double check it. There was something around a 2/3 vote in there earlier on, but it needs specific timings as well. Yeah, thanks, Matt. That's 2/3, so it needs a 2/3 majority of a council decision. Right. It would need to be done at certain points as well within the council term, because changing from a first past the post system to any form of proportional representation is going to need a boundary review underneath it, because rather than having single member wards, you're going to need larger wards that are at least 3-member wards for the actual proportional representation side of it to work. That's all got to be completed then in advance of the election where that takes effect, and you can't also change back to first past the post for a certain number of terms after that decision's taken effect as well.
Okay, thank you for that. It's interesting to know how that might be brought about. I'm not saying anybody would want to bring it about, of course. Thank you. Any other questions from members, please? Giles, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just well, you asked a question that was in my mind. I think I'd like to confirmation about in the report. It refers to changes to the section on broadcasting, so it's only the full council meeting is broadcast. Have I heard that right? And the other question I had, where's it gone? The bit about job sharing provisions for executive members and or committee chairs. I find that a little bit odd and wonder how it would work in principle. And I wonder if any guidance has been given from Welsh Government about how practically you could implement such a thing. And for example, if you were for yourself, how would you job share that with somebody else? If an officer wanted to contact you for a decision or some guidance, and they phoned you, say, "No, it's not me today. It's so and so." And I just think it's really clumsy. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what's in this bill we're going to have, whether we like it or not. But yeah, some comments would be appreciated. Thanks.
Chair, would you like me to come in and
yes,
make
please. Yes, sorry,
and John may wish to come in as well. But so on the first point of live streaming, obviously as a council, you have gone above and beyond what has been required in the past. I think John sort of made reference in this. So sort of our live streaming of meetings has always been in advance of what's been required of us, and that will sort of continue to be the case. So there's sort of currently expectations around sort of live streaming of some meetings, but we have always live streamed all meetings that take place in County Hall. So the only exception to what Monmouthshire County Council has live streamed has been area committees where they've taken place away from County Hall by their very nature. So we would expect to certainly broadcast no less than we are under the current arrangements. I think Councillor Howard raises a point regarding job sharing. There hasn't been any detailed guidance on this as yet. I think if we look at where that has come from, and this council, and from memory, I think this committee has previously responded to consultations from Welsh Government around how we can increase the diversity within local government, make the role of council more appealing to different people, and that includes making the role more family friendly. So I would believe that some of the responses around being able to job share certain roles, such as that of cabinet member or committee chair, are in response to that. Obviously, it doesn't mean we have to do it, but it is an option which is there, and if that makes that role of cabinet member, which is, as an example, is an incredibly demanding position, something which could open up to a broader number of members on the basis of sharing some of the time commitments and responsibility. I would think that is to be welcomed, but there will be practicalities to work through and ground rules along the lines that Councillor Howard has suggested. An officer's looking to make contact with a cabinet member. That means there are two people in the conversation potentially, or they may choose to divide the role up by dividing up a portfolio in certain areas, with one of the cabinet members picking up certain aspects, with the other picking up others. So you could, for example, look at the breadth of some of the cabinet job descriptions we have at the moment, and you could quite easily see how they could be carved up between two people because of the nature of the commitment and the breadth of undertaking. But yeah, it would have to be something we work through.
Okay, thank you. Anything to add, John?
No, nothing, Chair, only that we're part of the working group with the Welsh Government that are looking at coming up with the guidance that's going to complement the bill. And they are conversations that we've been having with them on how job sharing in particular is actually going to work. I mean, the bill's quite clear in terms of the vote is attached to the position. So if you're a cabinet member with a job share, you still only have one vote. You don't get two votes because you're job sharing. But you know, some of the practicalities of if you share out a portfolio, as the example Matt said, then you could have just people dropping in and out of a cabinet meeting, voting on certain items, and certain individuals going down different routes. So no real clarity on it yet, but as soon as we have something, we'll definitely bring it back to the committee for clarity.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Woodhouse, your hand is raised.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to touch on the mention of a members' seminar to further explain the contents of this bill, because I found the report particularly useful, and yes, I echo Joe's comments on this, that it was very helpful in understanding that a lot of the things that are in the bill without going through it all. So it was a good, clear picture. Now, I'm conscious that not every member's on this committee, even though they would have received the agenda and the report. So it might be worth an email out to members asking them if they would like a seminar, just to go through it in a little bit more detail. So that was point one. The other thing I wanted to say was the job sharing. I thought that was particularly useful. I won't go into that because Matt has covered it very clearly, and John. But yes, I think that would be a big advantage to encourage more people to come forward, because we do know how busy the cabinet members are, and other people who hold other positions, you know, that could be split. I seem to recall I wasn't on the council myself, but last time, I think there was a joint deputy leader, and I think that sort of probably worked well. So we've got something to reflect back on if you know, that would help. Sure, yeah. And I'm sure other councils are doing it and we can learn from them. But yes, I just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Woodhouse. The seminar that was mentioned a couple of times now, is there anybody who wishes to pursue that? I mean, is that what views are there on holding a seminar to further explore the bill? Any thoughts anywhere? Right, so may I ask Nicola if she would email members and see if there's a call out there for a seminar on the subject? Would you do that, Nicola, please? Will do. Excellent. Right, the answer's on the screen. Thank you. Right, if there's nothing further on the item on the bill, let's revert to the agenda and on to the next item, which is the Constitution review. And no jokes on that. We have Matt Phillips and all 572 pages of it. Over to you, Matt, if that's okay.
Thanks very much, Chair. Why would you be making a joke about the Constitution?
It's something that crossed my mind, that's all.
Yeah, so this is long overdue. So thank you for giving me the chance to come speak to the committee today. What I really want from the committee, before I kind of set out what it is and what have you, and actually to explain to anyone watching. So I'm Matt Phillips. I'm the head of law and the monitoring officer. As the monitoring officer for the council, it means that the Constitution is my responsibility effectively. So I've been conducting a review into it with a view to updating and releasing a new one in the next couple of months. So what I'm asking the committee for today is, I don't want to burden you with an in-depth debate over, as you said, the 500 and whatever it is pages of the Constitution that it is now. It might be a bit less than that. I just want first of all, I'm using this as a bit of a kind of starting gun to make sure we get into the process that brings it through to council. Second of all, I just want your views on whether you're happy with the kind of actions I've got lined up, the proposed timetable, which will take us to the point of finally discussing it in council. Third of all, whether you would support the idea of a member seminar on the Constitution, and then finally, then it's over to you, and I'm happy to go into whatever corners of the Constitution that you so desire today. So, quite how much detail we get into is entirely up to you, and I'll reply as required. Right. So. Just to explain to anyone watching what this is all about, I'll try and get this glare of sunshine behind me away. That's not working very well, is it? So basically, you've got powers and laws and what have you created at central government, and then they are cascaded down to different organisations to act upon. Local authorities act within the constraints of a number of laws, but also are empowered to apply a number of laws. And when I say a number of laws, we're talking hundreds. You know, you think everything from the number of different pieces of legislation that a planning committee has the delegated authority to deal with before we start getting into a whole raft of other areas. So it's a huge web and network of different pieces of law and what have you that we as a local authority have to act upon. And then that's divided into different ways of dealing with it. Some things only the council can do. So that's why, votes are taken on the budget, for example, every year. That's a power that can only sit with full council. It needs the best part of the 43 members we have to be present and in attendance at a meeting to have gone through the detail and take a vote on it. But there are other things that can be delegated in different ways. Some things, there's a whole raft of things, as long as it sits within the budget and policy constraints, will be the responsibility of the executive. So that's our cabinet, as chosen by the leader. And of course, the leader is someone who is elected by council every year. So there is that degree of check and balance and control that sits there. And then the vast majority, which just refer to the day-to-day functioning of how the authority works, are then delegated down to chief officers, whose responsibility is then to decide within their directorates who has the ability to exercise what powers. So if we use me as an example, you're not going to have council get convened to make a decision on whether to start legal proceedings against someone. That's just not how it works. So that delegated authority sits with me. I'm not the person who's going to do that. Then I'm going to look to one of my qualified lawyers to then work with whoever the client department is in the organisation to then start those legal proceedings in a court of law. So it's just an example of how the practicalities of applying these laws that we're there to administer works out. So the Constitution is basically the way that we try and take all of that law, bundle it into one document and make it clear who has certain responsibilities for different elements of legislation, who has the responsibility for deciding on the policy framework that the organisation needs to work within, and then how that is to be kind of shared out amongst the organisation so that we can function effectively. So the key stuff, the stuff by law that's required to be made by all the councillors present, is done so. But we don't get to a point where we actually absolutely cripple the organisation by trying to bring everything through a political lens. Then it does a bit more than that. It kind of sets out who does what roles from a councillor point of view. It'll set out the rules of procedure that we follow when we're together, how agendas should be put together when they're dispatched, how members of the public can get involved in council business. It sets out the code of conduct that both councillors and employees have to follow, and financial procedure rules, stuff around contracts. It's a big document because it tries to cover a huge amount of stuff in one kind of consolidated space. So if that's what it is, I need to just explain where it is at the moment. It's always publicly available. It's available via the website, and it was last seen and approved at council in December 2017. Now, since that point, there have been changes in people inhabiting different key roles within the organisation. There has been new pieces of legislation released that will make changes to what the constitution should look like. There have been decisions taken by council that will need reflecting. So really, it's been trying to bundle up all of those changes that have happened, and I've gone through the process. And I mean, it's been about a year and a half of working on this, because the first 6 months went quite well after asking people for, suggestions that they wanted changing, and trying to do a bit of a stock take of what laws and what decisions have been made by council. And then we, this time last year, we started dealing with floods and then COVID, so it's slightly waylaid me. So my apologies for how long this has taken. So what has the approach has been fourfold. They're set out in the report, but one of the heaviest lifting, but ironically the simplest element, I suppose, is just refining the utility of the document. I want a document that it's very easy to make reference to. It's slightly disjointed in its construct at the moment, so it now runs just sequentially from 1 to 43. And there is basically there's a paragraph number next to every piece of constitutional writing in there, so that there can be no doubt as to where stuff is and how it's set out. The currency element I've spoken about, just getting it up to date with all of the changes that have happened since it was last done. Decision making is a key part of that currency piece, and that's where a lot of the work has happened around part 3, which deals with the delegations of power. And so that's the bit I would certainly invite people to spend most time looking at if they're so inclined. And then the final bit is, as I said, I've gone out and asked people for their councillors, officers, are there better ways of having the constitution set out, and just taking those lessons learned. So what we've ended up with is this report. You can see, I've just got it on my screen, so we're going to scroll down. I've tried to set out the key changes as I've registered them as I've gone through, so that's in the appendices. And I've also tried, because I want to be as open and clear as possible on this, I've set out the submissions that have been passed to me that either haven't been incorporated yet or probably won't be, and just so there's no suggestion that I'm someone's come to me with a good idea and I'm hiding the fact that and I've not included it. And then there's 2 other links on the agenda. It's been put out on the website. One of those is to a tracked changed version of the constitution, which just looks horrific, because the nature of the changes, I've gone through it line by line and changed pretty much line by line. But again, the point is so that people can see completely in an open way what changes have been made. I don't think there's any way of hiding changes that have been made. And then there is the clean version, which is hopefully what it will look like when it's finally completed. It's not there yet. That's why we're starting this final process now. And certainly, your prior agenda item is incredibly relevant. There's a lot of stuff within the Local Government and Elections Bill that will cause our constitution to change. I've captured some of them, but a lot of the stuff that's going through at the moment is still subject to working groups. While the bill should become an act this month, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of it will come into force straight away. And in fact, it will be well into next year before some of the sections within the Local Government and Elections Act will actually become law. So I will reflect those changes as and when they come in, rather than try and to be too preemptive about the changes to the constitution. And there are just a few other bits and pieces that I'm kind of keeping a record of that I've not made the changes to yet, just to see how the outcome of these kind of conversations go. So the timetable that I'm proposing is that this is me kind of firing the starting gun. It's out there, it's available to all constituents if they want to make any sort of representations to the councillors, but certainly to all councillors. I'll be going through a brief with Cabinet in an informal setting at some point in the next week or 2. I've sent the links and an invitation to any of the group leaders for so I can go through with any groups or with the leaders themselves, should they so wish. The final date is the 11th of March. That's the day I intend on taking it into council for the final vote on it. And so my question is, I think a member seminar would probably be a good idea on this. Is that something that the committee supports? And if so, my intention would be to do that at some point in February. That's everything from me. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Thank you for all the work that you've done on the Constitution. We do appreciate it. And over now to councillors. No raised hands as far as I can see at the moment. But are there any, or is there any question, or is there a feel that we need a member seminar? Councillor Grocott, you've appeared on my screen. It's nice to see you. Welcome.
And can you hear me as well? That's
I
not
can,
so
yes, good.
Yes. It's just a very quick question for Matt, really, for those of us who are town and community councillors, as well as excuse me, for those of us who are town and community councillors. Will there be the same requirement for all councils to look at their constitutions? Would it be a good idea if in Abergavenny, for example, we looked at our constitution for the town council? And yes, I would support a seminar as well while I've got the mic. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Do you like to come back on that one, Martin? Matthew, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Grocott. So it works differently between local authorities and town and community councils generally, as far as I understand. First of all, that this isn't something that is being specifically required of any layer of local government. It's something that should happen as a matter of course, and that responsibility sits with me. It's been quite a long process this time because I've taken such a root and branch approach to going through it. While actually, I mean, there's a, if you look at the track change version, there is a massive amount of change that's happened to the document. If you look at the key changes, you can see that the substance of the change is not actually that large. I haven't completely taken it apart and put it back together again. Most of the change has been stylistic and formatting and getting it into a little bit more of a workable document. So moving forward, my intention would be that I'd be bringing this into council approximately every 6 months, just to reflect any changes I make that typically would be the result of a change in legislation. Or a good example would be a council decision. You know, there have been council decisions made since the Constitution was last reviewed that need to now be included in the Constitution. The creation of an investment committee would be a fairly obvious one of those. So we're kind of operating off a melding of a constitution and a council report, when actually it should just be reflected in the Constitution. So I have a duty to be, now that I've done the big kind of heavy lifting, to get this into council more frequently, so it's just a running process. Town and community councils don't, I don't know this for sure across the piece, but generally my experience of town and community councils is that they work off a set of standing orders that is a lot more about processes and how meetings will be held, agendas pulled together, the nuts and bolts about how it works. They're less so about the kind of delegated decision making that is set out within our constitution. So they often will have a set of different policy documents and standing orders that sits at the centre of all that, but not necessarily a kind of consolidated constitution. So that there is a requirement of them to have the various documents, obviously, but there's nothing linked to the work that I've done with the Constitution here that places any onus in any way upon town and community councils. That said, the Local Government and Election Bill may well contain elements in it which requires local authorities to review their standing orders. Certainly when you think about the changes we've made for coronavirus and the ability to do remote attendance, that's one of the kind of wins, if you like it, from the COVID period that I think will remain. So I imagine there'll be some who need to amend standing orders to reflect that, but nothing specific from the work that I've done with our constitution.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any members? Sorry, right, Councillor Woodhouse.
Thank you, Chairman. And first of all, to our head of our monitor officer, Matt, thank you so much for this report and for all the work you've done on the Constitution. I know you've been doing it for an extraordinary long time, and how you've managed to produce all of this and all the pressures that the pandemic has raised on you, I don't know. So I just wanted to say a huge thank you, and for the clear report which accompanies it, because it is a lot of reading, and I do appreciate all that you've done, and I'm sure every member would be very, very grateful for it. I've just got two little questions, really. So one is public questions, which you've made some changes to, which is very interesting to see, and will encourage people, hopefully, to submit questions now with the knowledge of the agenda. You've shortened the time from 5 days to 3. So obviously that will give people the opportunity to see the agenda and prompt them to ask questions. How do you want those questions submitted? Obviously, and once they're submitted, will they be circulated to members prior to the meeting? I'm just wondering how that's going to work. It's a good move, and hopefully we've talked about this before in this committee, something that will encourage more questions, because we don't get very many at the moment. The other is just a little point, really. I don't know if I'm misreading it, but section 27.2.1, I love the way you've laid it all out. Election of leader. There's a reference to if sometimes there, obviously the change to the period of our terms on these local government periods is changed from 4 years to 5 years, and there's a reference to 4 years. I just wondered if that was what was on the previous constitution. Is there any reason that that's still 4 years, is all I'm asking on that one, or should that now be 5, in view of the fact that it will be laid out now that all these periods run for 5 years, unless there's obviously something that intervenes, some reason has changed in the meantime. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sheila. Do you want to come back, Matt?
Yeah, this is brilliant, isn't it? This is why these interactions are so useful. So I'm now desperately trying to scrabble through the new constitution to find the points. On the first bit, while I've changed the deadlines, I don't think I've put any detail as to how it should happen, and I would expect the guys in Dem Services to basically run the routine that they had before. But if there's a suggestion on how that should happen, I just need to make a decision on whether it's something that needs to be set out in the constitution, or whether it sits, in the kind of margins as to how Democratic Services want to run the administration of it. And I'm going to have to. It sounds like that is an error. I mean, I love the fact that you got down to 27.2.1. I think that's absolutely fantastic. So I'm now I'm going to add that to my little list of, and I'm hoping that quite a lot of these little issues and abnormalities come out, so that I get to fine tune it. On that point as well, so where these kind of issues come up, where it's one of just an incorrect reference, or it could be a typo or something like that, I have the ability to make those amendments without having to bring it back to full council every time. So I don't want anyone to get too concerned that, given the wholesale changes I've done and the inevitability of the mistakes that will be within such a big document, that I've got to keep coming back to council. I can make those changes myself without needing council approval. But I'll click on one of my new hyperlinks down to 27.2.1 and make that change ready for March. Thank you very much.
Right.
That's excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay. Can I thank Sheila for the proofreading, and also thank Matthew for all the input for leading up to today and including today. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Howard, the hand is raised. Right.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I didn't want Matt to get away with things too easily. It sounded like it was winding up to a conclusion. No, I've nothing awkward to ask. Of the ideas that didn't make it through the cut, the one that I was a bit disappointed by, it wasn't my submission, was that to Planning Committee and a suggestion that absent members could make written submissions. And I thought that was possibly a little bit unfair. I get the point about advances in remote meeting, and the comment that members need to either attend or not, but sometimes it isn't always possible to to attend. And if I had a work meeting this afternoon, I wouldn't be attending this, or indeed any other meeting, because that would come first. And I know on previous occasions other members have read out statements from colleagues, and that hasn't seemed to cause an issue. We extend the opportunity to residents to read out a statement, and I think if we were to limit a statement to 500 words, not years, well, it feels like 500 years sometimes. I don't think that would be unreasonable. As the second question, I've gone through the Constitution draft. For some reason, I haven't got the search or the find function on it, so I've had to go up and down, and I may well have missed it. So apologies if I have. I've looked at delegation of functions, decision making, etc. I don't think I could see specific reference to a scheme of delegation per se. And are we to take it then that this document replaces such a thing, or if not, when do we have chance to review and consider any changes to the scheme of delegation? That was all, Chair, but again, thanks to Matt and everybody who's had an input in this, because it's a hell of a long read.
Thank you, Giles. Matt, do you want to come back? Or
Yeah, so I was remiss in not saying from the outset, of course, this is council's document, and ultimately it will come down to the decision that council make in March as to the nature of it. Clearly, trying to write anything by committee is nigh on impossible, especially something of this detail, which is why I think the member seminar will be useful for getting into some of this detail. But I'm trying to kind of tread that line between my observations as to what is good and bad, the submissions that people have made to me, and what is legal, what isn't, and then it can come down to a kind of final decision as to actually what it is that council wants. So on the statements being submitted by those who are absent, to explain my thinking there, it's trying, there's clearly any committee is going to benefit from the submission of the views of a normal committee member who has taken the time to look into the detail of a matter and has a view on it. The problem is trying to stop us from getting to a point of allegations against council as a predetermination, or any sort of allegation that would suggest that it's possible to influence a discussion at which they're not party to, and therefore not capable of hearing the other information that's presented at the time. So this being a reason why it wouldn't be possible to submit a notification for a vote, because of course you couldn't show that you voted on the basis of having listened to the debate and taken everything into account. So this is one of those lines that, frankly, I've taken the approach that it's safer, I suppose, to avoid those kind of accusations, to not put something into the Constitution that is specific. However, the chair does maintain a considerable amount of control over how they want their committees to run, and so unless it's specifically prevented, that it may be then the chair can make those sort of permissions. But I didn't want to go down a bold route of allowing it for fear of what it can turn into, or for fear of the kind of accusations that can be levelled for not being party to a debate and only providing it wouldn't be predetermined necessarily, but a pre-thought, predisposed submission. So that's my thinking, but it's purely my thinking, and it's open to challenge. So the scheme of delegation, there isn't a specific scheme, like one-stop shop scheme of delegation in the current Constitution. It's Part 3, taken in its entirety, effectively, that sets out where the decision-making powers lie. So there's an explanation at section 15 around the kind of principles and responsibilities of decision-making, and then Part 3, which is not on the contents yet for reasons of my pure ham-fistedness with a computer, to be perfectly honest. But it starts at section 19, which starts to set out where functions. So for schema delegation or for decision making, read functions, I suppose, is the easiest way of explaining this. So section 19 takes you through an introduction, explains who can be decision makers, and then it takes you step by step into those different decision making bodies. So start with council at section 20. 21 talks about the committees that have been delegated by council. Section 22 sets out local choice functions, and these are those things that, frankly, it's left to a constitution of a council to decide where they sit. Then you get into the executive functions at 23. Then you see the delegations made to officers at 24. And that sets out the general delegations at 25, and then the specific delegations for each of the chief officers and some of the statutory officers at 26. And that also covers off the delegations to the planning service, because there's quite a lot of delegations to sit there. So a one-stop shop scheme and delegation, I'm afraid not. Sections 19 through to 26 that set it all out, that's where all the information is, and that basically in its completeness makes it part 3 of the Constitution.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions to ask? If there's no further hand up, question then needs to be addressed is, do we want a member seminar? This probably the feeling for that has been yes so far, but any thoughts amongst members?
Chair, if I may.
Jamie, please.
Thank you. I myself would welcome a seminar. I've started to read this report from Matt, but for myself it's heavy going. It's going to take me a long time to go through it and to digest it all. Unfortunately, that's just the way I am. But I would welcome a seminar. Hopefully things could be simplified within that seminar if need be. But I think all members of the council really would benefit from a seminar with regards to the Constitution, just to remind ourselves of what we are representing and our roles and responsibilities, I suppose. So I would welcome it, and thank you, Matt, for the report. It's a lot of work has gone into it, and you've apologised for the amount of time because of COVID and flooding and whatever. That didn't even come into my thinking of how long it's come to take. COVID has affected everybody in various ways, but the fact that you've got this out to us today is monumental. So, but thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jamie. Any other views? Right, we've had basically a proposal from Jamie. Is there any dissent to that? Are we happy to have a member seminar then? Right, yeah, thank you.
Let's say yeah.
Right, thank you, Matthew. It would appear that we would like a member seminar to explain some of the niceties of the Constitution and what it implies to us in the future then. Okay, thank you. Now, following on from, before we come on to the next item on the agenda, in the council meeting last week, something arose about hybrid meetings and also changing the date of the planning committee from August to July. I think that was probably dealt with by Ruth, our chair of the planning committee at the time. But any news on those, John? Are you still there? I'm sure you are. And
yeah.
Hybrid. Sorry to put you on the spot. I didn't mean to do that. I should have alerted you beforehand. And as we're on the issues brought to me by members of the council, I was asked to whether people that aren't members of scrutiny meetings can be given the link so they can actually attend, let's say, a CYP meeting because of interest or any other reason that they would want to join a meeting.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah, I'll pick the hybrid meeting bit up first. The the simple answer to it is we've got the technology in place to be able to have some councillors in the chamber and have some people remoting in and live stream everything at the same time. So we've tested it a few times on a couple of licensing committees. It's worked pretty well. So technology wise, we're all good to go. The issue we got at the minute is if we can work from home, then we should be working from home, and it'd be a bit irresponsible of us to start grouping members in the council chamber when, like today's meeting is proving, we can all do it from home.
Yeah.
So once the rules change, once the relaxations come into place where we can start to get members back in the chamber, then we can pick it up straight away. But at the minute, obviously with everything going on and the restrictions that are in place, we won't be taking it forward until
that's fair enough.
Just come into place. And then in terms of access to select committees, I mean the hybrid meetings or remote meetings have brought around just a different way of accessing meetings for members and for the public. If a member wants to just listen into a conversation on a select committee, then they can access the live stream of that meeting in the same way that a member of the public can. So they're not missing out on anything, and they can access it that way. If members want to attend the committee and actually contribute to the committee, then simply all they've got to do is just drop an email to the chair of that committee, and we'll extend that invitation out. We don't want to blanket extend invitations to all members, simply because that can we've got to try and manage the voting element within the meetings and in the background. And if we invite everybody into the meeting, then they've automatically got access to the same functionality as full members of that committee, and we need to try and manage that in the background somehow. But as long as the member emails the chair, asks them for permission, they say yes, then we can more than happily just bring them in and send them the link, even at short notice. So that's not a problem.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And am I right in thinking that the meeting, the planning meeting question brought up in council last week, that was answered by Councillor Ruth Edwards?
Yeah, like you said, Councillor Edwards answered that pretty well. We've got set out structures and timetables that lead to each planning committee, and it'll be left as it is.
Yeah, and in no way am I trying to undermine that, just that it was mentioned at one stage and I noted it, just to show that I do take notes in council meetings. Right.
Chairman, could I just make a comment?
Absolutely, I was getting you now.
Sorry, there isn't a raised hand now, so I am sorry I had to butt in. But just on the point of accessing select meetings or other meetings, Hazel now sends me the link. She knows the ones that I would like to observe at, and it works quite well. So as long as Hazel's informed, you get the link like the members of the committee. So I just wanted to point that out. That it works very well, what John has just described. I do it quite often. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trahan, are you?
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask you, Chair, to for the next agenda, could we have an item to discuss area committees and if and when we can start resumption of said committees, please?
By all means, yes. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Area committees, right.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to have wandered off the agenda a little bit there, but apparently that's what chairs are allowed to do. I'm not being cocky. Right, that brings us to item 6 on the agenda, to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting. Are we happy that these minutes are signed as a true and accurate record of the last meeting before Christmas now, in the end of November, was it? I can't remember the date, but all happy?
Move, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, second, yeah.
Right. Okay, that brings us. Sorry. Right. That brings us to
just acknowledging the minutes. Sorry.
Right. Okay, that brings us to the end of the agenda. The next meeting is on is in March, the 15th of March. Is there any other item of business that further to the area committees that Councillor Trahan has mentioned that we would like placed on the agenda for the next meeting? Right.
Chair, can I just ask on the area committee topic? I mean, one of the reasons we haven't been able to really pick up area committees again is due to the pilot sort of in the North Monmouthshire area committee, where we've got community councils actually sitting on the committee. From our perspective, we know all our members, the IT they've got, the access they've got, and we can bring them into meetings, no problem. But I think if I can ask members to maybe do a scout around in their community councils and see who is actually able to take part in the meetings remotely, because I know some community councils are still just meeting via telephone conference. Some have just stopped altogether and have delegated the decisions out. Some are using Teams like we are today and to have our meetings. So there's a whole raft of different ways of doing things on the community side. And we wouldn't want to start the area committees up with leaving them out. So if you can perhaps just do some scouting around within your own patches to see what sort of technology level everybody's at to be able to feed that into the discussion next time, then I think that would help.
Excellent.
Okay.
Cheers, John. Thanks.
Giles?
Yeah, thanks. Answer to John's point, so I know Clan Voice Vow a meeting by telephone. They had been meeting up when they were allowed to, albeit in socially distanced. But their meeting is only by telephone, and I don't think there's an appetite amongst members to do otherwise. I mean, if that's going to be the case for a number of councils, and we're going to be in the current situation for a while yet, is it worth us reverting to an area committee model for a short period of the kind we used to have, where it's just the elected members, so at least we have a meeting and are able to discuss those local issues, than not have a meeting at all? I don't know how we'd be able to achieve that, or that have to be changed to standing orders, but it might be worth thinking about.
Okay. Jamie, you brought the subject up. Do you want to give us any insight into your way of thinking at all, or?
Thank you, Chair. Well, Monmouth Town Council at the moment meets via telephone conferencing. That's because there are a number of members who can't access video platforms, so we have to use telephone conferencing. There are those that can access video conferencing, not to say that those that can't wouldn't want to participate. It's just we haven't had any for a while, and it might be a good idea if we could and just send out emails to anybody if there's anything they want raised at the area committee, just for clarification or assistance or anything like that, just so that we don't lose the area committees. But I understand where John's coming from and all that, and Giles has made a good point of elected members only, where the elected members would ask local or their own area town councils and community councils if they want anything brought forward to submit them to the local members. And then the meetings could be recorded and posted so they could be accessed by the local communities as well then. Because a while ago I did ask for if we could have area meetings so each area could be briefed on the impact coronavirus has had on our wards. And again, the same argument was made that because not everybody is able to access it and this, that and the other, which I get, but I just thought I'd bring it up, and it was asked, I think, at pre-meeting for full council in group on last week. So I just thought I'd bring it up and see where we were. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Jamie. Matt, you've requested to come in, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So probably worth mentioning, John quite rightly has highlighted some of the challenges with area committees, but I guess we also have to recognise that whereas we rapidly stood up after the virus, most aspects of our decision making and scrutiny process, and indeed we were commended by audit Wales for the speed with which we've reintroduced those processes. The area committees have been a little bit behind, and some of that, quite rightly, and a major part of that, as John has pointed out, is because of the technology. Perhaps subject to members making some inquiries in their local areas along the line, as John has suggested, is perhaps we can sort of bring forward a paper to the next meeting of this committee with some of the options of how that could operate. You know, perhaps along the lines of the elected county councillors only, or with other members, perhaps accessing via, you know, community and county councillors. Community and town council, so I should say, accessing via telephone, but perhaps there'll be a number of different ways in which we can take this forward, or it might be the recommendation of the committee that area committees continue to remain stood down at the time. So I think one of the things we do have to recommend, and one of the incredible has been their accessibility to local people, to come along, to engage, to listen to some of those the evidence coming forward locally. And of course, if the technology limits the ability of area committees to engage with local people and to act as that sort of in between the local and strategic, they're not really able to fulfil that role fully. So I think it probably does warrant further discussion, and if we can bring forward some options to the committee, and perhaps suggest we have a fuller debate on it at the next meeting of Democratic Services Committee. Okay,
thank you.
Okay.
That sounds appropriate.
Thanks, Matt.
Right, we've got some comments. I'll give any town council uses Teams for meetings. Thank you. And right, that's about it there. John, am I right in thinking that you will not be with us for the March meeting? John Pearson?
I probably will.
You will be with us.
I will. Yes, probably.
Excellent. Right. In that case, then I don't need to say goodbye to you yet. Then that's great. I would hate the occasion of your last meeting to go by without acknowledging that, John. That's my thinking. And right, members and officers, can I thank you all very much for your attendance this afternoon and your input and all the work that's gone on beforehand. And we can now declare the meeting closed unless anybody tells me differently.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. OK. Thank you all very much indeed. And above all, keep safe and keep well. Thank you.
Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you very much, David.
Cheers.
All the best. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Chair.